What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to Propability. We're going to take a deep dive into these props for UFC Vegas 66. We got a 14-fight card, 14 fights to talk about. As always, we are here with Uncle Weezy. Weezy, what is up? You looking forward to UFC Vegas 66, the last card of the year?
It's the light at the end of the tunnel is getting a lot brighter, Brady. We're gonna have a month off, no UFC for a month. It's gonna be very, very interesting with what we do with our time during that time off. But hey, we got one more week to stack cash tickets like flapjack. So let's get into these time props. Let's see if anything is sticking out. And Bet Online a little bit lazy this week. 5 Dimes a little bit lazy this week. Yeah. They're just now starting to get these lines out. So this is why we do this show, though, on Mondays, Brady, because it's just so much more valuable if we can catch these lines as they're opening. This show just has so much more value for those who watch it because, you know, these time props in particular do move a lot. And last week we gave out under 2.5 in Quarantillo Hernandez at plus 155. We're making that bet on the air, you know, and that thing is closing around even money. So these are the spots, you know, our prop template will identify value when it's presented to us. So let's hope that these guys present us with some value today.
Absolutely. This is my favorite show to do every week just because I love betting these props. I love betting on the violence especially, and just a lot of things stick out during the show. So we'll see if we can find some spots here, Weezy. Before we get into it, you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe here to the MMA Engine. I believe, Weezy, you're going live with Cody Brundage. Is that confirmed or...
Yes, it is Wednesday.
Ooh.
We will be doing it on Wednesday on the MMA Engine YouTube channel. So 2 days from now, we're going to be talking with Cody about this upcoming fight with Mihail Oleksiejczuk. He was just supposed to fight Rodolfo Vieira. Vieira had to pull out. They couldn't find Cody a replacement for that event. So now here he is after training for Vieira, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with great top control in wrestling. Now he's going to be fighting a pure striker in Mihail Oleksiejczuk. So I can't wait to talk to him about the changes that he's had to make in camp, how he's going to approach this fight, and what the path to victory is for Cody Brundage in this spot.
Let's go. I will be tuning in to that. Hopefully you guys do as well. If you want to shout out the chat before we get into it, Propaholic, first one in the building. We got Grateful Dude as well. We got Victor. We got Rob. We got Colby Chaos in the building. We got Skull in the chat as well. We got Prince of Mischief. What is up, guys? Leave a like. It does go a long, long way here on the MMA Engine. But I say we get into it, Weezy, and we're going to start with the first fight on the card. What fight you got going first? You have
I've got Cannonier Strickland here.
Yeah, we'll start for the main event. Good call.
Yeah, okay. Because, you know, at least we've got some time props for these first few fights. We go over those. Hopefully something else drops here.
Perfect. All right. So for some reason, Bet Online saying screw the main event. We're not opening anything yet, but they have stuff out for 5 other fights. But we have the fight goes to decision. This is on 5 Dimes at minus 125. The fight doesn't go to decision at minus 105. Kind of how I see this fight, Weezy. I don't know if it's the same for you, but I think if there is a finish in this fight, I do lean it being on the Cannonier side. And if it does go to decision, I kind of lean it being towards Sean Strickland winning that decision. So I think it's kind of pick your poison here. Could Sean Strickland finish Cannonier? Potentially, I suppose, but I really think it's more likely that Cannonier gets the finish in this one. Curious to hear these 5-round analytics, though, in terms of the middleweight fights finishing across 5 rounds here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I put the 5-round analytics onto this spreadsheet, even though it's a 3-round template here. But yeah, dude, I think you broke it down perfectly, Brady, because if you look at Cannonier's finish rate at the UFC level, he's finished 6 of 8 wins. So he's got more finishes in 8 wins than Sean Strickland has in 12 UFC wins. Strickland's only finished 4 of 12 UFC wins here. And even like in a couple of these fights, in particular the Uriah Hall fight, it felt like there were a couple of times where Sean had a Uriah on skates and then he took him down and laid on top of him. You know, he didn't really show that killer instinct, you know, but I think Sean's kind of got to screw loose. I think if you give him a 25-minute fight, you know, that he's going to be like, this is a chance for me to fight another grown man for 25 minutes straight. Why should I get him out of there in 2 when I could whoop his ass for 25 straight? That's kind of like how Sean fights. But if he takes that approach against Jared Cannonier here, who's got a lot of power, who's finishing at a 75% clip at the UFC level and at an 80% clip as a pro, it's very dangerous, and Jared had some really nice leg kicks. But if we look at the 5-round analytics here, we're going to see that middleweight fights are finishing 59.32% of the time. And right now, I think I have that analytic. Do I have 59.32 down here? Yes. So I've put the analytics here on this line, which means that all of the percentages are going to be correct up here. But we only have 2 lines. We have fight doesn't go to decision at -105, which is a 51.22% implied probability. That one is shaded because they want us to bet violence here, because I think the bookies are kind of feeling that this fight will go the distance. But at 51.22% implied probability, we know that these fights are finishing 59.32% of the time. So we're getting an 8.1% break. But these guys' fights are only finishing inside the distance 46.67% of the time at the UFC level. So we're overpaying there by about 4.55%. And these guys' fights are finishing inside the distance actually at a 12% rate lower than where the division is finishing, which is 58% for 5-round fights. So it looks like they're trying to get us on board for the fight doesn't go here. And the fight goes at -125. I don't like it at all, Brady, because we know that these fights are only going to decision about 40% of the time, little 41% of the time here for middleweight fights. We're paying 55 here, and it's not like Sean Strickland's the kind of guy who's just going to hold Cannonier up against the cage for 5 rounds. He's not going to wrestle fuck him either. This is 2 middleweights that are going to stand in front of each other and bang, and when you're presented with that archetype of fight, you're probably going to get violence more times than you're not. This isn't Izzy versus Cannonier, where Izzy can be really hard to find. I mean, Sean Strickland's not hard to find. You open your eyes, you found him, because he's right in your face the entire time. So I'm leaning violence here, and with this 8% number here that we're getting better than the benchmark, it doesn't bother me that much that we're overpaying by 4.55% here and 12% here, because, we're getting a nice edge over that benchmark. And I think stylistically, these guys are going to stand and bang. And, both of these guys have been finished at the UFC level 40% of the time. So I don't think it's an overpriced line. That's the way I'm leaning here.
Yeah, I would lean towards violence as well. And I'm also curious to see where they put the finish only for Cannonier, because Cannonier has been finished twice out of 6 losses, but he's getting finished at heavyweight and then at light heavyweight. He's never been finished at middleweight. Sean Strickland's been finished there twice. And on top of that, Cannonier does have a much better finish rate as well. So I'm curious to see where they put that finish only for Cannonier. If it's around a pick'em, I might take a look at that as well.
Yeah, because it's a closely lined fight anyway, so you might be able to get that kind of value there. I like that a lot.
Yep, we'll have to see where they open that at. Usually they open the main event first, but not this week.
Not this week, but if something does pop up here, I'm going to keep refreshing the Bet Online screen on my other monitor here and see if anything else opens.
All right, sounds good. Let's talk about this co-main event now. We have Arman Tsarukyan going against Damir Ismagulov. We do have odds for this on Bet Online. So we have the fight goes to decision -210. The fight doesn't go to decision is +170. No totals yet. But I lean the fight goes to decision here. I think both guys are very, very tough. Both guys, not the best finishers in the world. I think if there is a finish in this matchup, it will be on the Tsarukyan side. But I do lean towards this fight goes to decision. The fight goes actually opened up -200. It's currently -210. So there has been some early money coming in on that. But I think this fight does go to decision more often than not. Weezy, anything sticking out here on the co-main event?
What's sticking out is the fact that the fight goes to decision bet here at 66% is overpriced by almost 17% according to the benchmark for 3-round 155-pound fights, which means that, these things go to decision between 49 and 50% of the time. 49.16% of the time, these fights are going to decision. We're paying 66% here. So that's the bookies telling us, please bet violence, right? But they're asking us to bet violence because we can see this number right here and this number right here. Those add up to more than 50% in edges when we look at how these guys are going to decision at the UFC level. 10 of 12 times, 83.33% of the time, these guys are going to decision. and that includes one 5-round fight for Arman Tsarukyan. So, these guys are not finishers at this level, and especially Damir Ismagulov, all of his UFC fights have went to decision. So, minus 195 could definitely be a parlay piece, in my opinion, this week, because, Brady, it would just seem shocking stylistically, right? If you see Tsarukyan getting a finish over Ismagulov or the other way around, the only way that I would bet that is because I believe that money comes in still on the fight goes at minus 195. It goes to minus 210. It probably goes to minus 250, minus 275 by the end of the week. And here's why. Because these guys are going to decision 83% of the time. I mean, like, these are the kind of times where you can lay juice and still feel like you're getting that 10, 15, 20% edge over the books, which we are when based on the prior performance of the two athletes involved in the fight. So, this one is underpriced over here on the violence at plus 170 at 13.8%, but overpriced by 20% and 34% when we compare these guys inside the distance rates to what we have on the implied probability of the line and what the division is doing as a whole. So definitely looking for a fight goes here. But you said it already moved from minus 195 to minus 210 on Bet Online?
Yeah, 210 on Bet Online right now.
Yikes. Yeah, so it's getting it's getting more expensive by the minute, and unfortunately, you can't really parlay it on Bet Online. But even at this price, minus 210, it's absolutely bettable.
Yeah, a parlay piece, high level fight, competitive fight. I see it going to the distance. If a finish in this, I don't know. It kind of shocked me if there's a finish in this fight, to be honest.
Here's the way I see the finish happening, Brady, and that's if we see Damir Ismagulov have another disaster on the scale, which has happened once. 9 pounds he missed by and had a fight canceled. So definitely something that we got to keep our eye on. This guy is a huge lightweight. So we've got to keep our eye on Ismagulov on the scales. If he looks anything like Hermanson looked on the scales the other day when he got finished by Roma Dolidze, then we could say maybe because we're getting that big plus money number, maybe because both of these guys are such skilled mixed martial artists, one of them does find a finish, but it's not likely. These guys are both very defensively sound.
Yep, I agree. I'll have to take a look at the weigh-ins for Ismagulov, but if he shows up and looks fine, I think the fight goes as a parlay piece is not the worst look in the world. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We have Amir Albazi going against Alessandro Costa. We have the fight goes to decision plus 170. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 210. And yeah, I got done taping this one today. I forgot who Alessandro Costa was, which is concerning considering I did Contender Series content this year, but went back and watched his fights. I now remember who this guy was, and I like him a lot. He's a beast. He has a ton of power. He got a very early first-round knockout in his last fight. He's also a BJJ black belt, very slick on the mat. Albazi, very slick on the mat in his own right. I don't know. After watching the tape on these guys, I think they're both very dangerous. I just don't know if I see a finish happening in this fight. Albazi is a very dangerous guy on the mat, like I said, but is he going to sub the black belt and Alessandro Costa, who's never been subbed before? I don't know if I agree with that. So I kind of lean, honestly, like the fight goes to decision at plus 170, as crazy as that sounds. So yeah, I might be looking non-violence here, Weezy.
Well, but that's why we have the template, right, Brady? Because it's like, if we just bet every time, right, what we thought was going to happen, we would be paying juice fucking 90% of the time.
Exactly.
And then at that point, we would be held to such a high standard. You look at people that have been in this game for a very long period of time, Brady. Like, for instance, like if you were doing Tapology picks, right, every single UFC event and picking every single fight, if you wind up sitting around like what, 62.5%, you're right there at the meaty part of the curve with most people, right? But like at 62%, if your average line is like minus 200, you're getting your ass shaved. You're getting clipped for like a negative 5% return on investment there. And that's the standard that we get held to, is that, we know that even when we're on a roll, we're still really only going to be right 70, 75% of the time over those areas where we get hot. So we need to always be cognizant of the price that we're paying. And look, I mean, it's right here. Let me zoom in on this. because I like to have it so we can see the whole thing on the screen. But when it's important, we want to zoom in. Minus 215, fight doesn't go to decision, is a 68.25% implied probability. These 125-pound men's fights are finishing inside the distance only 42% of the time, right? So when you take that 68 and you subtract 42, you get this, or actually when you take the 42 and you subtract the 68, you get a negative 26%. So that's the bookies telling you, go ahead and bet it, please. And we just need you guys to be wrong about, 35% of the time, and we're going to make money. So that's the key, is the standard that you get held to. And every time you see those negative numbers in front of the lines that you're betting, remember, you're being held to a higher standard. Do you want to pay minus 215 just because what you see on tape indicates that there should be a finish in the fight, when what the long-term benchmark is telling you is that, hey, really the percentage of this happening on the long term is 43%. It's not 68%, you guys. So we're overpaying by these big numbers. And then when you look at the UFC records of these two guys in 4 fights, they're going to decision, or they're finishing inside the distance 75% of the time. That's we're only, or I'm sorry, it's different than that. They're finishing inside the distance at an 8% rate higher than what the division does, which is 42%. So they're only finishing inside the distance 50% of the time. So you're really overpaying there. And this is, when you take that plus 170, you're getting almost a 21% break over that benchmark, which is telling you that, 58% of the time these fights do go to decision. And you're only paying 37% here, and that these guys are actually going to decision 50% of the time. So you're getting a 13% break there in a very small sample size. But stylistically, Costa is taking the fight on short notice, and Albazi's a top 15, top 10 guy right now in this division. So it's a tough row to hoe. It's easy to see Albazi getting a finish here. But at the same time, if you're asking me which way the analytics are telling me to bet, they're telling me to bet the over because that's the better price. And if we bet really good prices over a long enough timeline, we're going to be making money in the long term.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Like I said, both guys very, very good finishers. Costa has been finished before by knockout, but it was a while ago. I'm curious to see where they put this over under at 1.5 or 2.5. If they make a mistake and put it at 1.5, I would be very, very interested in that.
Absolutely, because like you said, Costa is a black belt, so that it's going to be much more difficult for Albazi to do what he does best, which is get submissions. Now, he's got really nice striking too. Both of these guys are kind of dangerous wherever they go. So, but if they're both skilled enough, it becomes much more difficult for them to get the finish. And we know that long-term benchmark for finishes in 3-round fights at 125 pounds for men, 42%. It's not very high.
Yep, I agree. Obviously I could see violence, but just minus 215 at that price, this does not make much sense to me. So I will be betting maybe the over 1.5 potentially, maybe even take a shot on the fight goes decision. We'll have to see. And it looks like money has been coming in on that fight goes decision on on 5 dimes already. So that line is moving a little bit. Looks like from 5 dimes it went to plus 165 to plus 145 already.
Okay. Yeah. That tells you that there's some value hunters out there.
Yep, I agree. All right, we'll keep moving on to the next fight. And we have a very interesting one here. We have Alex Caceres going against Julian Erosa. The fight goes to decision minus 160. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 130. Yeah, I'm having a kind of a tough one deciding this one, just because Julian Erosa, I typically do like betting violence in his fights. And you take a look at some of these violence numbers. You have Julian Erosa, an 82% finish rate. He's been finished in 5 of 9 losses. Caceres has been finished 8 times, 7 by submission. Erosa, very good on the mat. I guess the only reason I don't love it is because I just struggle to see Alex Caceres finishing Julian Erosa. When Erosa's losing inside the distance, it's by knockout, it's by hard hitters, and Caceres really isn't that, with only a 16% knockout rate. And is he going to be the first person to ever sub Erosa? I'm not so sure about that. So it's one where I do lean violence on this one, but I kind of like the Erosa inside the distance line a little bit more but it would be violence on or pass for me on this one, Weezy. What's sticking out here?
Yeah, so the violence lines here, we've actually got a trifecta bet for the fight doesn't go to decision sitting at plus 135, but it's not the kind of trifecta bet you go running to the window for, right? We want to see, especially because we've got a 38 fight sample size right here. So if we're getting a good number in this row, which is the fighter finish rates versus the implied probability of the line, that's something that should open our eyes and we should say, okay, there's definitely value here. And there is. On this, we got 7.5% value that we're getting, which is telling us that these guys in their 38 fights are finishing inside the distance at a 50% clip, but we're only paying 42.55% here. So that implied probability of the line is very underpriced because we've got a big sample size of 38 UFC fights between these two guys, 12 for Erosa that are finishing at a 2/3 rate, and then 26 for Caceres that are finishing at a rate that's actually right on with what we're paying. 42.31% finish rate for Caceres, 42.55% on the line. So, and we know that Erosa is a guy that really uses that cardio and that output and that pressure to, and he does trust his chin. You know, a lot of people talk shit about Julian Erosa's chin. Dude, Erosa's style of fighting it puts him in a situation where he's gonna get hit a lot. You know, so he does trust his chin successfully a lot of the time. It's just we remember the times that he wasn't able to trust it, where he did get knocked out, which is 4 of his 5 UFC losses that give us the impression that this guy can't take a punch. But the fight goes to decision being at minus 160, Brady, is overpriced by about 5% according to the benchmark, which isn't bad, but it's overpriced by 11.5% according to the 50% finish rate for these two fighters. So that is not a line that's worth betting, and you're laying juice. So at plus 135, that's the bet I have to bless here. Now, Caceres isn't likely to knock out Erosa, which has been the easiest way to finish Erosa, and Erosa isn't likely to knock out Caceres because Caceres is very durable. He gets submitted. He really doesn't get knocked out. Only once at the UFC level has Caceres been knocked out. We even saw him come back from that, illegal knee against Sung Woo Choi, and he had gotten hurt already before that illegal knee as well. So dude's very durable. I see why the optics would lead you to that fight goes to decision bet, but it's absolutely overpriced at minus 160. I would much rather bless that plus 135 for the fight doesn't go. And if you get any better than that, it's probably worth a small bet, Brady, because that sample size of 38 UFC fights, getting a 7.5% break, according to that, it is nice.
Yeah, but it's definitely violence or pass for me. Don't know if I'll get there. It's not something I'm running to the window for, but yeah, I could see violence in this one. Let us move on to the next one. This one's kind of a tough one for me. We have Drew Dober going against Bobby Green. We have the fight goes to decision minus 150. The fight doesn't go to decision plus 120. This one's tough because Drew Dober's an absolute killer. He hits like a truck, but Bobby Green's a very tough, durable guy. Both guys very tough and durable. When Drew Dober's losing inside the distance, it's by submission. I don't really see Bobby Green submitting him. I kind of actually lean fight goes to decision on this one, but I don't know. Not something I'm really passionate about. Weezy, what is sticking out on this one here?
Well, what sticks out to me is that, whenever I see a Bobby Green fight, I'm already thinking in my head decision. I'm just thinking that, right? Bobby's very elusive. He's very hard to find. He's very fast, and the speed doesn't just help him in his striking offense. It absolutely helps him in his striking defense. He moves his head very, very well. We've got a guy in Bobby Green who's only been finished twice at the UFC level, and one of those was by Islam Makhachev. So Bobby Green fights where he's only finishing at a 33% clip. And I think he finished a realtor. He finished a couple other guys earlier in his career, Brady, that, a long time ago. But we know that Bobby Green is very reliable to bring us a decision. And when we look at the line here, minus 150, right? It's overpriced by 11% according to the benchmark. And we look here, 54% of their fights have went to decision, and we're paying 60%. So we're overpaying there by about 6%. But when I look at a divergence between the decision rates or the finish rates of the two fighters involved, I ask myself, which fighter's style is more prevalent? I think Drew Dober is going to fight Bobby Green's fight here and not the other way around. So I see this fight going to decision stylistically. At minus 150, can I run to the window? No, I can't. I kind of need something a little bit closer to minus 115, minus 120 for my fancy to be tickled, Brady. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because right now at this price, it's just not quite good enough because Drew Dober is so dangerous, because he's so powerful, and because he has a way of drawing other people into his style of fight. You know, he really does bring a lot of pressure, and he trusts his chin, so he can force his style of fight just like Bobby Green can kind of force that point fighting style. So this is one that just really doesn't interest me much from a time prop perspective. I feel like right here, Brady, it's properly priced.
Yeah, I feel it. I think the line's about right. I do lean it going to decision. Again, just because both guys are so tough. I mean, you need a shovel to finish Drew Dober on the feet, and like I said, I don't see Bobby Green submitting him. On the flip side, you need a shovel to finish Bobby Green as well, right? So,
Yeah, dude, he's tough.
Oh yeah, both guys very tough, incredible chin. So yeah, I think fight goes or pass for me, but not something I'm running to the window for at minus 150. That's for sure.
Yeah, agreed. But that could be like a probability parlay thing from that our guy UFC Egg puts together. I would put the fight goes as one of the legs of that.
Yep, I like that. All right, let us move on to the next fight. We have Cheyenne Vlismas going against Corey McKenna. And I believe this is probably the most juiced fight goes decision on the card. We have fight goes to decision minus 285, and fight doesn't go to decision is plus 205. Yeah, that's a lot of juice, man. I mean, Cheyenne Vlismas, she has some really solid power. I think she's going to have a pretty big striking advantage here on the feet, reach advantage. She has some power there. Corey McKenna, pretty hittable. And then on the mat, like Corey McKenna's a phenomenal grappler. So honestly, I think I would probably lean towards the violence side here. There's no way I can lay minus 285 for the fight going the distance here in a striker versus grappler matchup. Weezy, what is sticking out on this one?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Striker versus grappler matchup. The fight goes juice to the tits at minus 285 here. That's overpriced by 4.5% according to the benchmark. Overpriced by 11.5% according to the 62.5% decision rate of these two fighters combined. Overpriced by 7% because these ladies go to decision at a 7% clip lower than what the division does. So we look over here at the fight doesn't go. It's a big plus money number. We love that. We always want to veer towards that plus money number. And then we see, according to how it's priced compared to the fight goes, it's a little bit underpriced compared to the fight goes in terms of how we compare it against the benchmark. And we're getting a 4.71% clip here, but nothing exciting because we've only got an 8-fight sample size here. And they're finishing inside the distance 7% more than what the division does. So, yeah, I mean, the plus 205 is definitely the path that I'm going here because Cheyenne fights mean. She does look, she never finished a fight until she got to the UFC. And now that she's here and fighting better competition, she's finished 2 of her 3 opponents. So that's really impressive to me. And like you said, man, Corey McKenna, once she gets fights to the ground, she's very dangerous there. She's very good there. And we saw Montserrat Conejo get her with the head and arm throw Cheyenne Vlismas several times and have success holding her down. So, maybe Corey could have some success on the ground in this fight, getting close to a finish or getting a ground and pound or a submission, getting her back. Yeah, I mean, at minus 285, you can't parlay that. It's too juiced and it's overpriced. You should be getting something closer to minus 225 if you even want to consider that bet. So yeah, the only one that I could bless here is the fight doesn't go, and it might be worth a small stab at plus 205.
Yeah, and a lot of times they open up these over-unders at 2.5, and the 2.5 is like something crazy. So might be looking out for something like that too.
Yeah, because you can get like plus 240 or some shit, and you're like, why not? Somebody could sprain their ankle in there. Somebody could pull a hamstring. I mean, there's a lot of shit that could happen.
Yep, agreed. So yeah, I would definitely be on violence, if anything. Definitely staying away from that fight goes as a parlay piece at like minus 285. I think that's pretty wild.
It's too overpriced, Brady, to even consider.
Absolutely. All right. This one's an interesting one, man. We have Jake Matthews, and he is going against Matthews Semelsberger. And the fight goes to decision -160. The fight doesn't go to decision is +120. I don't know. Like this one, it feels a little bit too good to be true. I mean, we saw Jake Matthews go out there in his last fight and look like an absolute killer. It would have to lean violence, and the numbers are definitely backing that up. I just have a weird feeling about this one. Weezy, what is sticking out here?
Yeah, what's sticking out is striker versus striker matchup. Two grown men that are strong and hit hard, gonna stand and bang most likely here. And we've only got 45% implied probability on that fight doesn't go, but we could see that these guys at the UFC level in a 22 fight sample size are finishing 54% of the time. But, Semelsberger's been finishing 2 of 4 losses. He's never been finished at the UFC level. I find that interesting that he was finished on the regional scene twice, but never at the UFC level. But, Matthews has been finishing 4 of 5 losses. So we've got over 50% of their losses have finished inside the distance. Over 50% of their wins have finished inside the distance. And we're paying less than 50% for fight doesn't go. It's another trifecta bet here. And it's about a total of a 17% edge, and it's plus money. So that tells me that -160 stinks on ice, Brady. Don't bet that. It stinks just as bad as the McKenna Vlismas fight goes at -285. That's where you bring the shopkeeper over to you and you say, I'd buy this if you were halfway honest about what it was worth, but it's not, so I'm not going to buy it and I'm leaving right now. So that -160 is a pathetic price, and you should not be considering it. You should not be paying juice because it's overpriced by 10% according to the benchmark, by 16%. And we've got a 22 fight sample size here. Paying 61% for fight goes when only 45% of their fights go to the decision. Terrible. Yeah, the +120 is a very bettable number for fight doesn't go to decision.
Yep, I can see it, man. It feels too good to be true. +120. Yeah, I'm taking a look at it now. Semelsberger has been finished twice. He got finished in the 3rd round by punches against Jerome Featherstone back in 2018, and then he got submitted in the 3rd round as well against Darren Costa. Someone in the chat mentioned that Jake Matthews might grapple here. I can see that, and like you said, Semelsberger has been subbed before. If Jake Matthews comes out here and looks anything like he did in his last fight, I could definitely see Jake Matthews finishing, but he's been kind of a decisionator lately outside of that last performance.
Yeah, he has. But, I still like that, the fact that over 50% finish rates in combined wins and losses here, that's definitely significant. So, it just, in terms of what we try to talk most about in this show is the price of the line. And the price of this line is underpriced for violence right now.
Yeah, maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe I just have PTSD from the Diego Sanchez fight. That got me bad.
Dude, no, I mean, like that's absolutely valid to bring up things like that because we got to remember, it's not just what the data says. Our eyes see things too, and that it's hard to forget that performance.
Yep, trifecta. We'll see if I add it throughout the week, but yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. +120 there. It's definitely something that caught my eye. All right. Next,
let me bring something up here, Brady, real quick. I just want to, mention that, Bet Online starts dropping props about an hour before the show, and they're pretty good about, once they finish one fight, they go on to the next one. The second that Propability starts on the MMA engine, Bet Online stops updating props. So I would just like to say hello to all the good folks at Bet Online. Thank you for waiting for what we say until you cowards open up the line. You're a bunch of cowards. You should be booed. People should throw tomatoes at you and yell shame. And since you're too ashamed to open lines before you hear what Brady and I have to say about them, let me just ask you, maybe you should hire us. If you're that incompetent, hire guys that actually know what they're talking about and would know how to open an over-under or a fight goes or a fight doesn't go without you having to go running to your boss and asking permission. Grow a pair. Bet Online. Start dropping these props. Don't wait for what we have to say.
Exactly. That's a really good point, Weezy. I just noticed that as well. Like as soon as we start the show, they're done.
Not one line opening,
Nothing.
and which means that we're working for free right now, Brady. These guys are listening to us so that they can open lines, and they're not even paying us, dude.
Sick. It's a really sick game they're playing over there at BetOnline. Shame. Big shame. Big shame. Unbelievable. But let's move on to the next fight. I love the rant, Weezy. And you also had a legendary rant, probably best rant ever last night on Stat Diggers as well.
Thank you.
But
we needed that one.
Oh yeah, I think everybody needed that one, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we have Julian Marquez going against Duran Win. We have the fight goes to decision, plus 155. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 195, and kind of like the main event, but maybe a little bit more. So I see this fight playing out one of two ways. I think it's going to be a Duran Win decision where he's taking down Marquez across 3 rounds. We saw Maki Pitolo almost do that before completely gassing out. Or I see Julian Marquez beating the crap out of Win on the feet, landing a big shot, hurting him. I could see Julian Marquez getting a submission as well. He has a great submission game. Duran Win has been subbed before. So yeah, I see it playing out one of two ways. If it goes to decision, I lean strongly that Win probably wins the fight. And if this fight does inside the distance, I lean strongly that it's going to be on Julian Marquez. So some props I'm looking at is going to be the decision only for Win and the finish only for Marquez. In terms of the fight goes or fight doesn't go, to be honest, I really wouldn't touch it here. At minus 195, that's way too chalky for me. And then the fight goes to decision, and that'll take a good couple of years off your life betting that as well. So I don't really like a time prop on this one. I'll be looking at the props instead. Weezy, is there anything sticking out to you?
Yeah, what sticks out is that you analyze that perfectly. You know, we've got a big divergence between the finish rates of the two fighters at the UFC level. For instance, Julian Marquez, 100% finish rate as a pro, therefore 100% finish rate at the UFC level. And then you got Win, who finished some guys on the regional scene. I don't know if any of them were any good, but, you know, he's 0 of 2 in his UFC wins in terms of finishes. So, you know, I mean, like the finish equity, almost 100% on the side of Julian Marquez. So you would look for the books to make a mistake on that finish-only prop. And decision-only prop on Duran Win, another great look here, because if Duran lasts the full 3 rounds, chances are, you know, that he had success with the wrestling. And why wouldn't he? I mean, Julian Marquez folds like a lawn chair anytime anybody tries to take him down. I said on Stat Diggers that he made Maki Pitolo look like Kale Sanderson out there, you know. So obviously, Duran Win, a wrestler of that dude's quality, you know, he can absolutely take down Marquez and ride him for the full 3 rounds, working that top control, ground and pound, and making Marquez wear his weight, and then just stay safe from the submission attempts of Marquez, which he's got a really good, slick submission game. So very interesting fight. But in terms of time props, you know, you look for something to stand out. These guys opened it in a beautiful spot here. Plus 155 for fight goes, not nearly enough plus money there to sweat that one out, you know, a finisher, the quality of Julian Marquez. And then you're paying, you know, 66% on the fight doesn't go. And then and what you're saying stylistically, what if Marquez just gets blanketed by Win for the full 3 rounds? That's entirely possible. And that's enough of an event possibility for you to say, I'm very happy to completely leave that minus 195 alone. So yeah, time props, no. I'd be on the lookout for a decision only for Duran Win. If this fight goes the full 15 minutes, I think there's a very good chance that Duran wrestled successfully. And if Duran wrestles successfully, he probably wins this fight.
Yeah, I think he could 30-27 him if he wrestles successfully. So yeah, decision only for Duran Win. I'm curious to see where they put that on DraftKings.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for that line. And I also saw that on 5 Dimes, they had Duran Win by decision. I think it's sitting at 325 or 350. I mean, that's his path.
Yep.
That's his path. Plus, look, Julian Marquez is not tapping to anything. You could hit that dude in the face with a shovel and he's still not going down. I know Rodriguez, you know, knocked him out, but like, look, that was the referee stepping in. Marquez would have just kept walking forward, taking that beating if there wasn't a ref in that cage. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, Marquez, is a great finisher, and Duran Win isn't. So that means that you want to attack those individual props rather than the time props of the fight.
Yep. Rodriguez has shovels for fists, so I think we can forgive Marquez for that finish loss there. All right, we will move on to the next fight here. We have Cody Brundage going against Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. This is my favorite violent spot on the entire card by a mile, but it is also the bookies' favorite violent spot on the card as well. It is the most chalked. Fight doesn't go to decision line here at minus 260, and the fight goes to decision is plus 200. And yeah, I think this is going to be an absolute car crash, like both their fights are. I think Cody Brundage is going to have a pretty big advantage on the mat. I did not like what I saw from Mikhail Oleksiejczuk on the mat whenever it hits the mat, like against Jimmy Crude. I know it's Jimmy Crude. He's a great grappler, all that, but Crude was able to get him out of there. And then OSP, as soon as OSP got him down, he was able to get him out of there. And Brundage is very slick on the mat. He's able to get in dominant positions, good submission game as well. So I think if Brundage does get this to the mat, he's going to have some opportunities here. And on the flip side, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is an absolute killer on the feet. So I do like violence here, but they're not doing us any favors with the minus 260 there.
Yeah, I mean, 72.6%. And, we've got a sample size of 13 fights at the UFC level for these two guys, and they're not even finishing at that rate. So, the books are on to us. They basically said right off the bat, yeah, I think this fight finishes inside the distance more times than not. And I think it's going to look obvious to the public, too, that that's going to be the case. So you open it at minus 265 as a book. I'd feel safe opening it there, saying, yeah, that's a good enough opening line that even if it does get steamed, I don't mind having the exposure at that probability. So, and by the way, I'd like to say hello again to Bet Online, who actually started dropping props about 3 minutes after the goddamn rant that I just. So hello, Bet Online. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you being here. They dropped a plus 250 on the fight doesn't go to decision according to Propaholic there. So they're starting to drop the lines now. So it's just good to know that they're watching our show, and we appreciate them for being second to the market every week. Bet Online does a great job of getting out opening lines to the public way before everybody else does. So,
yes.
But yeah, Brady, I would want to bet violence in this fight, but I think I might have to look for the under 1.5. Let's keep in mind that these guys, while they're finishing inside the distance, Brady, 69% of the time, they're finishing under 1.5 rounds 61% of the time, right? So now we can get a much better line for an under 1.5 in this fight, simply because we're only giving up, while we're going to get 30% reduction in implied probability, we're going to only really get 6% reduction in terms of how these guys finish fights at that level. So we like that. 69% finish rate inside the distance, 61% finish rate and under 1.5. So that would probably be the best way to go. And as a matter of fact, these guys have finished inside of round 1 61% of the time. So that fight doesn't start round 2. Under 1.5 could be underrated ways to get value on violence bets for this fight. Plus 200. I would say that's bettable, actually, for fight doesn't go to decision, because, maybe Cody does have success wrestling but doesn't get a submission. And maybe he holds Mihail up against the cage and not much happens for a while. So, I mean, it could go, but I still feel like that would be quite a sweat. And at plus 200, the analytics don't bless it enough for me to go running to the window there either. So I'm going to be keeping an eye out for what that under 1.5 could be. If I could get that at plus money, plus 135 or something like that, that could be interesting.
Yep, I like it. I think it's going to be an absolute car crash. Under 1.5 makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what Cody has to say about the fight as well Wednesday. Maybe we'll get some better insight there as well.
Right here on the MMA Engine, everybody, so stay tuned.
Yes, sir. All right. We'll keep moving on, and then we'll go back if anything drops throughout the rest of the card or the breakdown here. But we have Said Nurmagomedov going against Said Yakub Kochkarlagov. We have the fight goes to decision at -135. The fight doesn't go decision at -105. Another very high-level fight here. Weezy, what's sticking out to you on this one? I kind of lean the fight goes, but anything sticking out here?
Here, hang on, just checking the lines again. Still nothing updating outside of the
Look at this
McKenna fight.
Look at this. Look.
What happened?
Do you see the chat?
No way!
So that's great.
I was on another screen. I totally didn't have my StreamYard up. I didn't see.
That's classic.
Love Bet Online. They're always first to market of the books that I have to open these lines. So job bless them over there. But yeah, so for this one, it's about perfectly priced, right, Brady? We see that -135 for the fight goes, overpriced by about 6.5%, which is almost fair pricing considering we're usually getting about a 7% VIG here. And then we're overpaying by 7.5% compared to the 50% decision rate of these two fighters, overpaying by about 1% here. So it's a negative trifecta bet, but it's at the same time, it's not like terribly overpriced in any area. And the fight doesn't go, almost 3 negative numbers here too. So it just goes to show you that they've priced this right about where it should be. But you know what, man? I think both of these guys are extremely dangerous, right? And I think Said Nurmagomedov will go to decision when somebody doesn't push him, when somebody doesn't pressure him. But if you watch, like, for instance, that Cody Stamann fight against Said, Cody didn't take a backward step. He was pressuring the entire time. And Said dealt so well with that pressure. Said Nurmagomedov, that is, he deals well with that. He's got a very good reactive submission game. If you crowd him, he starts throwing hands. He doesn't like to take backward steps, and he will hold his ground when you pressure him. So, and that's exactly what Said Yakub Kakhramonov does. If you look at Kakhramonov at the UFC level, this guy is in control time positions for or against about 75% of the time. It's hard to do that if you're not pressuring, right? You know, because that's how you get close to your opponent. That's how you wind up getting them up against the cage, where you can shoot takedowns, where you can hold them up against the cage and get those control time, accruing for you. So I think the pressure in this fight leans me towards violence, but it's not underpriced enough for me to go running to the window here. So yeah, -2%, -1%, nothing really sexy standing out here. And we've got exactly a 50% finish rate amongst these two fighters. 50% for Nurmagomedov at the UFC level, 50% for Kakhramonov at the UFC level. And as, you know, middle of the road as these guys are in terms of their metrics, they've opened this line in a way that's very middle of the road, so there's no advantage on either side.
Yeah, it feels like a pretty good stay away for me. So I'm going to be staying away from that one for sure. Let's see what we got next. All right, we got Rafa Garcia going against Maheshate. We have the fight goes to decision is -175. The fight doesn't go to decision is +135. This is one where I'd actually lean violence, but the only reason I can't get there is just because neither guy's ever been finished. Rafa Garcia has a very, very good chin. Maheshate has never been submitted, but I could see like a Maheshate potential knockout, and I could see a Rafa Garcia potential sub. It's just, you know, with neither guy ever being finished, it's just hard for me to get there. So another one I'm probably going to stay away from, but I would kind of lean violence. A striker versus grappler matchup. I think both guys could be live to get the knockout or sub, but the fact that they're both so tough and have shown a ton of toughness kind of scares me away. Weezy, what's sticking out on this one here?
Yeah, so we've only got a 7-fight sample size for these two guys at the UFC level, so there's nothing really that compelling on this line number 10 of the spreadsheet here. We do see that we're overpriced according to the fight doesn't go to decision here, but I kind of tend to agree with your read, Brady, in that all of Garcia's finishes are by submission, I believe. It may be one of them by knockout.
Yeah, one knockout.
It's all by, is it one knockout?
Yep, just one.
Okay, so almost all of it by submission. And I think that, you know, if you're going to beat Maheshate, that'd probably be the best way. We saw him get just drowned in M1 by Goncharov, who just wrestled for the full 15 minutes. But to Maheshate's credit, you know, he kept getting up. He kept working. He never really got satisfied being held down. So it's going to be difficult for Garcia to do that. And, you know, that right hand of Maheshate is serious business. And it's not just that weapon for him, because he's 6 feet tall, because he's such a long lightweight, he's got some nice step-in knees, jump knees, kicks. He's got a lot of weapons in that toolbox. So as a striker versus grappler matchup, I'm leaning towards that fight doesn't go to decision here. I think that this is a matchup where both guys are going to have to work hard in order to get the fight that they want. And as a result of that, there could be a lot of damage or a lot of threatening positions that this fight does get into because, both guys are going to be working so hard to get their way. Don't have enough of a sample size to care too much about these bottom two lines, but we can see that just the underpricing is on the violent side here. We've got a 42% fight doesn't go to decision line here. And, as professionals, both of these guys are finishing at over a 50% clip, but it's just that Rafa Garcia's fights are finishing inside the distance only 20% of the time at the UFC level. But it could be 40 if that Gritzenmacher fight had finished and it came close a few times. So, I would have to lean towards the violent side here because that's where the underpricing is. And like you said, Brady, striker versus grappler matchup, not bad at all.
Yep. Don't know if I'll get there, but yeah, plus 135, man. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So we'll see if that makes my card there. But I don't think it's the worst look in the world. All right. So this one, Weezy, I mean, there's not really anything to talk about. They don't even have an over under a fight goes or fight doesn't go for the battle fight. But I guess I would lean violence, but we don't have a really line to talk about. Let me refresh to see if they got it yet. No, still nothing.
Still nothing there yet but okay, so let's look at the lines. We've got 2 of their 4 fights have finished inside the distance at the UFC level, but look at this, Brady. I mean, we know that Focordino was crushing cans on the regional scene, but 80% finish rate for him, 77% finish rate for Brian Battle. But at the UFC level, they're only finishing about 50% of the time. And since this is a welterweight fight, only 48.67% of these fights are finishing inside the distance. So if we can get a plus money number on violence here, I think it might be worth looking at. But, I really do believe that Focordino's path to victory here is to hug Battle. I mean, it's really kind of like what I think he's going to do well here. I know he does not want to stand at a striking range with Brian Battle. Brian Battle is just so much faster, so much of a better athlete, and so much more variety in his strikes. He's way more technical than Rinat. So, I mean, I see this as being another striker versus grappler matchup. Battle the striker, Focordino the wrestler here. But I don't think Rinat Focordino is finishing dudes at the UFC level. I just don't. I think you have to be a complete tomato can to get finished by this guy.
What was the dude? Michaelitis was a tomato can, and he could have even finished Michaelitis.
I know. Like I said, man, I mean, Michaelitis was absolutely exhausted, 2-3 minutes into that fight, and Rinat showed no urgency at all. But he, you can't blame him either. It's his UFC debut. You give him a very clear path to victory, and he just took it. And it was easy. It was a clean performance, a smart performance by Rinat. So yeah, I mean, I think he's going to try to do the same thing here. I don't know which one of these guys is going to get their way, but if we get a fat plus money number on violence, it might be worth looking at.
Yep, I agree. We'll have to see where they open that up at. But yeah, plus money. I'll take some plus money on some violence in this fight. So yeah, 2 fights left. We have Manel Kape going against David Dvorak. We have the fight goes to decision minus 105. The fight doesn't go to decision was minus 135. Was kind of hoping for some plus money here on the fight. It doesn't go, but not really going to get it. The reason I do like the violence is because I do like Manel Kape to win this fight. And Manel Kape's a finisher. Horrible minute winner. I think it's like a 94% finish rate. I think he's only won 1 decision. You can kind of see why. He's relying on those big moments, those big shots. So I lean towards him winning, and I lean towards him getting the knockout, but it's not really something I'm running to the window for. Weezy, anything you like in this matchup here?
Yeah, we got a nice little trifecta bet here for the fight goes to decision at minus 105. Now, of course, that's going to be terrifying because Manel Kape is a finisher. But let's not forget that Kape has been to decision 5 times in his career. And at the UFC level, he's been to decision in 50% of his fights. So that's compelling, because if you don't like the fights that didn't go to decision, right? Beautiful jump knee over Odie Osborne that he got him with, but that was an early stoppage without question. Odie was absolutely still with it. And then if you look at the Ismagulov fight, I mean, Ismagulov was marching down Kape, and it's usually the other way around. I mean, Ismagulov fought Kape's fight, stayed in his face, and wound up getting clipped, but he had landed some good shots too. So that, I don't think, is what David Dvorak is going to do here. Dvorak's going to be a little bit longer. He's fast. He throws good leg kicks, and he can mix in some wrestling too. So I think that this could be a slower paced fight. And we see the fight goes to decision at minus 105, but we got to remember that fights go to decision in this division of almost 58% of the time. We're only paying 51% of the time. And then if we notice here that 5 of their 8 UFC combined fights have went to decision, that's 62.5%. We're only paying 51. And that these guys are going to decision at a higher rate than what the division does. So that's a trifecta bet where we're getting about 22% edge over the house here. So the prop template very clearly likes non-violence in this spot. And I believe that Dvorak can absolutely last 3 rounds with Manel Kape here. And if he does at plus 200, man, that could be really interesting, because in my opinion, if this fight does go the full 3 rounds, it might mean that Dvorak had success wrestling, not unlike Mateus Nicolau did against Manel Kape.
Yeah, if this fight goes to decision, I think Dvorak's super live. I'm curious to see what the decision only is for Dvorak. I think we talked about that a little bit last night on Stat Diggers, right? The decision only.
I have it written here. Dvorak decision only. We talked about Duran win decision only. We talked about Julian Marquez finish only. Very obvious bets, all of them. But yeah, decision only when you got a guy in Kape who's 1-4 in his career in decisions, while Dvorak, I believe, is 4-3, but at the UFC level, he's 2-1 in decisions.
Yep.
And the one that he lost was to Nicolau.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that decision only is probably my favorite look of the card, and I think it's going to be pretty big plus money because Dvorak's like a huge dog here.
He is a huge dog, and he's a very skilled fighter, and if he can out chess match Kape here and find ways to win minutes without letting Kape's pressure get to him, he could absolutely be live in this spot. I just finished taping this fight today. I thought I'd get to a Dvorak bet right away, but I'm gonna wait and see what Dvorak decision is.
Yep, I think that's a really good look. All right, last fight here. We have Sergey Morozov going against Journey Newson. We have the fight goes to decision is minus 125. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 115. So about to pick him here. Yeah, pretty good finish numbers for both guys. You have a 61% finish rate for Morozov, a 60% finish rate for Newson, but both guys get finished a ton. Morozov has been finished 4 times, 3 by sub, 1 by KO, and then Newson has been finished 2 times out of 3 losses. So both guys not the most durable fighters whatsoever. So about to pick them. I do have some interest. Kind of wanted plus money, but don't hate the fight doesn't go around minus 115 at this point.
Yeah, and the fight doesn't go almost a negative trifecta bet, and the fight goes is a negative trifecta bet. So what does that usually tell us? Because we get this vig in the line, that it's possible to have negative analytics for all 3 on both sides, or not on both sides, but 5 out of 6. And that's exactly what we have here. And that's the mark of a perfectly priced line. And that's really what we have here. So the way that you would attack this is I would look at that 7 of 9 losses inside the distance and 3 of 4 UFC losses inside the distance and make that push me towards the fight doesn't go here rather than the fight goes. Newson's got some really interesting kicks from the outside. Morozov's got really good boxing and a really good ground game. There's nothing in this fight that about the pricing of this line or about the stylistic matchup that has me giving a shit at all about the time props where this thing is currently priced, Brady. I think it's priced perfectly, and it's not compelling enough of a stylistic matchup for me to have an opinion about it one way or another.
Yep, I feel it. We'll see if BetOnline gets plus me on that violence. What would like plus 100? Would that change it at all?
Plus 100, that would give us another 3.5%. So that would actually take it to a bet where there was literally no value either way. Negative 0.95% and positive 0.95%. And then the middle number, 0. So it's actually will be perfectly priced because both of these guys have 50% finish rates at the UFC level, and we'd be paying 50% on the line, so that's 0. And that the implied probability of the line, negative 9.95%, because 49.05% of these fights finish inside the distance. And because these guys finish at a 50% clip, they're actually finishing at a 0.95% clip. So it's perfectly priced at plus 100. I'd probably need even more plus money than that for me to be like, yeah, this is a bet worth making.
Yeah, and that probably not going to get it, to be honest. But I do want to point this out. Can you go to the Matthews Semelsberger
yes
section there?
Matthews Semelsberger, okay.
And can you plug in plus 150 for the fight doesn't go?
Plus 150, huh?
Yes.
And that's a big trifecta bet. 8.67% better than the benchmark because 48.67% of welterweight fights finish inside the distance. But these guys are finishing inside the distance 54% of the time. This is only priced at 40%. So that's a 14.5% break. So, and then these guys are actually finishing their fights at a 5.88% rate higher than what the division does as a whole. So that's a trifecta bet, and the trifecta adds up to about 28%. Definitely a bet that I would be making. Is that BetOnline's violence prop?
Yeah.
That's a bet worth making.
Yeah, because I was tempted at plus 130, but plus 150, I think I have to bet that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to bet that right now. Hello, BetOnline. Thank you for opening the props after we discussed them. We appreciate you guys, and they are the unofficial sponsor,
yes,
of the MMA Engine YouTube channel. The good folks at BetOnline. And how about you making an official sponsorship, BetOnline? Where are you going to get more gambling focused content than this? I mean, you should be sponsoring our show.
No, I agree, man. We always hype up BetOnline most of the time. Sometimes we crap on them a little bit if they take a while, but most of the time we have nothing but nice things to say about them.
I know that I really appreciate the fact, Brady, that they do get out lines early, and that's very important. That's you want to have access to books like that don't wait until the lines have already been opened and then moved by the public. It's much easier to go on BetOnline when you have an opinion right away.
Yep, absolutely. And then one more we can touch on, and then we'll kind of go do the recap. But if you could go to the Vlismas McKenna, and they have the fight doesn't go to decision at plus 250.
Yeah, man, that's another trifecta bet. 1.96, 8.93%, and 7%. Not quite as compelling as that Matthews in terms of the analytics screaming at us to buy it because we have a smaller sample size of fights, but it's a plus money number at an only 28.57% implied probability. So in my opinion, another bet that's worth making.
Yep, I don't hate that one as well, especially at that price tag. But yeah, quick recap, Weezy, what is sticking out to you, and then we'll try to get a PP going.
Yeah, so this is what I've got on my sheet, right? I've got fight doesn't go for the main event at minus 110. I've got fight goes for Tsarukyan Ismagulov at minus 210. I've got fight doesn't go for Caceres Erosa plus 135. I've got fight goes Green Dober minus 150. I've got fight goes Vlismas McKenna. Oh no, I'm sorry. Fight doesn't go Vlismas McKenna plus 250. And that's a trifecta bet. Fight doesn't go for Matthews Semelsberger at plus 150. That's a trifecta bet. And then we've got fight doesn't go to decision for Garcia Maheshate and we have fight goes to decision for Kape Dvorak at -105. Those are all the spots that stuck out. But parlay spots, how about fight goes to decision for Tsarukyan Ismagulov? How about fight goes to decision for Green Dober at -150? I think those are two good parlay pieces.
You said Green Dober and what was the other? Oh, Ismagulov, right?
Yeah, Ismagulov, Tsarukyan.
Okay. Yeah, that comes out to +146 for those two.
+146. I like that for a first leg of the parlay. And then we've got all these plus money spots that are bettable spots, but not really parlay legs, so to speak. But yeah, fight doesn't go to decision for McKenna Vlismas at +250. Fight doesn't go to decision for Matthews versus Semelsberger +150. Fight doesn't go to decision for Caceres Erosa at +135. Fight doesn't go to decision for Cannonier Strickland at -110. And then I had fight goes to decision for Kape Dvorak at -105.
Yeah, lots of spots sticking out. The ones that stuck out to me the most were I don't mind the main event fight doesn't go to decision or the Cannonier finish only, especially the Costa Albazi over 1.5 is something I'll be looking at. I don't mind the Erosa fight doesn't go or Erosa inside the distance. The Brundage McKenna under 1.5 rounds. And then the Garcia Maheshate fight doesn't go to decision. And then, of course, the one we just talked about, the Matthews +150 fight doesn't go. I did bet that as well.
Yeah, and Bet Online saying, how can we sponsor you when you have a DraftKings logo on the screen? That's an excellent point, but,
they can take it off.
Yeah, right, because they're not giving us shit.
Yes, exactly.
And frankly, their lines don't open early enough. So, yeah, maybe we'll get that shit off the screen, and maybe we'll talk to these guys next year.
Yes, sir. All right. We did it, Weezy. 14 fights, lots of spots sticking out, and they are starting to finally release. Looks like their Wi-Fi is back up because they're starting to get all these lines out. So, Weezy, let the people know where they can find you. You have a busy week this week, and let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, so Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Central Time, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I'll be going live for Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy, 10 o'clock Central Time. We'll break down all 14 of these fights from a tape study and stats perspective. We'll give you my track bets. We'll finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. On Wednesday night, I'll be doing Ask Weezy on my channel, answering any questions you have about this card. Also on Wednesday on the MMA Engine YouTube channel, we'll be interviewing Cody Brundage, myself and Lou Betya. We'll be talking about this upcoming fight, UFC Vegas 66 versus Mihail Oleksiejczuk. And then also the DFS show that we do on Pub Sports Radio, Brady. That'll be 6 o'clock Central Time on Wednesday. The last week of the year, we're going to find out who wins the contest. We're going to find out who has to get the Free Spirit neck tattoo like Caio Bahaio, and that will be whoever finishes in last place. But thank you guys for tuning in. Let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 66.
Let's do it. Yes, so guys, leave a like, subscribe, go check out Uncle Weezy and Lou Betya, Cody Brundage on Wednesday. Cannot wait for that. Check me out on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers, YouTube, DFS by the numbers, Pub Sports Radio, and here on the MMA Engine. Good luck, guys. Let us make some money for the last card of the